I still remember the sound. Not the words, those came later. But the sound that cracked my world open. A soft laugh, my wife's laugh, followed by a hushed whisper and the rustle of sheets. It floated through the half-open bedroom door as I stood frozen in our hallway, the cake in my hand beginning to tilt. Wax from the candles dripped onto my fingers, burning my skin, but the sting barely registered. My brain lagged behind reality, refusing to catch up, as if pausing the moment might rewrite it. "Come back to bed," a man's voice murmured. The cake slipped from my hands and hit the floor with a dull, heartbreaking thud. The crash of the plate against tile snapped everything forward. Inside the room, chaos erupted, scrambling, gasps, sheets pulled, feet hitting the floor. And then her face, my wife Lena, appeared, eyes swollen with shock and terror, the man behind her hastily buttoning his shirt. I didn't shout. I didn't ask why or how long or who. I just stared, numb as if watching strangers in a film. "Daniel, wait," she stammered, stepping toward me, hand shaking. I stepped back, the distance growing symbolic instantly. "Don't," I said, my voice barely audible. "Just don't." And then I walked out. I didn't pack. I didn't think. I just left, our home, our marriage, our life. Lena's voice cracked behind me as I closed the door. I vanished that night. No one knew where I went, friends, family, even my job. I resigned by email from a throwaway account. I shut off my phone, wiped my digital presence clean, and disappeared into a city that thrives on anonymity. Lisbon, where no one knew my name. And for a while, I convinced myself that disappearing was easier than feeling. But feelings travel. They pack themselves into the smallest crevices of a person and follow. The first year was rage. Rage at Lena. Rage at myself. Rage at the universe for letting trust be such a fragile, stupid thing. I replayed that night like a warped tape, looking for the exact second things went wrong. Was it when she started working late? When she guarded her phone? The sudden perfume I didn't recognize? Every red flag I ignored turned into a blade now cutting from the inside. I wrote letters I never sent. Long, angry, venomous letters. And then softer ones. Ones that asked, "Did you ever really love me? Or did I imagine it?" But none were enough to justify what she did. The second year was grief. Grief hits differently when the person you're mourning is still alive. I grieved a life that was still happening, just without me in it. Some nights I sat by the Tagus River, watching reflections of city lights ripple across the water, imagining a different timeline where she stayed faithful, where we grew old, where my trust didn't drown. I saw couples laughing, holding hands, and something inside me twisted. Part longing, part bitterness. I didn't know which hurt more. The third year was emptiness. A calm so hollow it felt like drifting in space. No rage. No grief. Just absence. That scared me more than pain ever did. Because at least pain proved the heart was still alive. So I forced life back into my veins. I learned Portuguese, painted my tiny apartment warm yellow, worked at a small cafe near the coast, and built new routines, new versions of myself. Not healed, just different. By the fourth year, something shifted. I began to understand that betrayal doesn't define a person forever, unless they chain themselves to it. And I didn't want Lena's choice to be the most important chapter of my life. I even laughed again, genuinely. I made friends. I existed beyond the wound. But I never fell in love. I didn't trust myself to trust. And then came year 5. A quiet afternoon at the cafe. Rain tapping at the windows. The place nearly empty. I was wiping tables when the door opened, and someone stepped inside, dripping rainwater, hair wind tangled. A voice, hesitant but familiar, whispered, "Daniel." My blood froze. Lena. The universe, it seemed, wasn't finished with us. She looked older, not in a bad way, just weathered. Eyes that once sparkled now carried storms. She clutched a photograph of us smiling from a time that now felt fictional. "I finally found you," she breathed. My throat tightened. 1,000 versions of what I would say if this moment ever came collided. Anger, indifference, closure. But none made it to my lips. How? I managed my voice stiff. I never stopped searching. I checked cities. Hired people. I deserved the hopelessness of not knowing if you were alive. Her voice cracked. But I had to try. I stayed silent. She continued. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness. You don't owe me anything. I just needed to tell you the truth." Truth. A bitter word. She wiped her face with her sleeve. What I did wasn't a mistake, it was a selfish, cowardly choice. I betrayed you because I was scared of how much I loved you. The closer we got, the more afraid I was that you'd see how flawed I was and leave me first. So I sabotaged us before you could. I stared at her, stunned by the twisted logic. Painful but human. I missed you every day, she whispered. The guilt destroyed everything. I haven't been in a relationship since. I couldn't. I don't deserve love. But you did. And I stole it from you. Her words didn't excuse her. But they exposed her humanity. And that complicated everything. Finally I spoke. You didn't just break us, Lena. You broke me. Tears ran freely down her face. I know. Silence stretched. Not awkward but heavy with 5 years of unsaid things. Then I asked the question I didn't know I still needed answered. Why come now? After all this time? She inhaled shakily. Because my therapist said, healing doesn't come from forgiving myself. It comes from accepting the consequences. The consequence of losing the only person I ever truly loved is living with it. I felt something shift, like a knot loosening, not out of forgiveness but release. I nodded slowly. Thank you for saying it. She looked up surprised, not expecting even that. I stepped back, putting a gentle distance between us. Lena, we're different people now. And I don't know what happens next. I need time. I can give you that, she said softly. Even if next is goodbye forever. I needed to look you in the eyes and own what I did. She turned toward the door, paused and whispered, you were the best part of my life. As she stepped out into the rain, I didn't call her back. But I also didn't feel the urge to run anymore. Maybe the real twist wasn't her finding me. Maybe it was realizing that after 5 years of running from the past, I was finally ready to stop.